Welcome to Class Act, Conversations in Data and Leadership. I'm your host, Shannon, Managing Director at MBN Solutions. And in every episode, we'll go behind the scenes of great leadership, from key hires and scaling teams to the human stories that shape the industry. This is where real conversations happen. Let's get into it. Today, I am joined by Jude McCorry, CEO at Cyber and Fraud Centre. Let's just dive right in. Jude, you've become such a well-known figure in Scotland's data and cyberspace, but I'm keen to rewind a wee bit what brought you to Scotland initially, and what were those early days like, both personally and professionally?
The reason why I came to Scotland was I met my husband, Robert, 20-something years ago, when I came for weekends over for my friend's 30th birthday. We dated on and off between Ireland and Scotland for a year. And then it was like, you going to move to Ireland or am I going to move to Scotland? So I wanted to move to Scotland. I felt at the time in Ireland, I felt it was all getting a bit too much with the Celtic Tiger and stuff. There was a downturn in the economy. I felt people were living way above their means and stuff. Whereas when I visited Scotland, it hadn't lost its identity. It felt like a really nice place to be. Every time I flew into Edinburgh, I was like, I actually could live here. I also felt there was so much more to do at weekends and everything as well. So yeah, I took the chance. I left a really good career in technology in Ireland and had a leaving do with everybody that I worked with from all different organisations, people that knew of each other from me and stuff as well. And I looked around the room and I was like, oh my God, I'm leaving all this behind in Ireland for a whim. I didn't have a job. It just felt like the right thing to do. And I moved over, and then I met with a guy called Maurice Smith, who I actually looked up on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. And I've always been lucky that people who I worked with have given me chances as well and been there for me when I needed the support as well. So came over, I met him for a coffee to say, I'm over here, but I don't have a job. It was the first time ever in my life that I felt I don't need a job at the moment, and I'll find something, but I'll find the right thing to do in a country that I'm going to make my home. Morris put me in contact with the owner of Firefly Communications, Mark Mellor, who's since died from cancer, but really great guy. And I ran Firefly for them in Scotland, which then got me into talking to other organisations, building up my network, because we started with about 2 or 3 clients. We had about 20 over the next few years. And then it was just like from meeting people and stuff, I started building up my network again. And it felt like I'd always lived in Scotland at that stage.
Yeah, knowing you, I'm not surprised it didn't take you very long to build up your network, Jude. And as you said, so your career actually started in marketing and comms, so from Dell to Firefly, and then you pivoted into data, tech and leadership. Can you talk us through that sort of transition and what pulled you into that sort of data and cyberspace?
So I started my career in Dell, so I was quite young. It was a really great place to work. After Dell, I worked in a startup in Ireland, and that's when it went under with the Celtic, with the time of the downturn and stuff, and the dot-com burst. But I worked for two guys, went from Dell with thousands of employees. We started with 100 and then left the organisation 5 and a bit years later, and there was thousands of people, and I left to work in an organisation with 4 or 5 people, and that was the biggest learning of my career. But it was still tech, it was data storage. So I've always followed what's next in the data side of things that interests me. I do lose interest. Probably 5 years is usually my area that I'm not learning. If I'm not learning anymore after the 5 years, which in Dell I wasn't, because it was just replacing technology with faster, newer technology and stuff. But then when I went into data storage, it was something new people. And yeah, it was a very difficult transition from a large organisation that you'd people to do things for you to you were actually making tea and answering phones. And I was hauled up in month 1 about my phone bill because my phone bill was £70. I never knew what my phone bill was in Dell. So yeah, there was a big transition from a large company to a small one. And then I think the technology industry wasn't as big in Scotland, whereas in Ireland you could go into any job with technology. Whereas over here, I didn't have the contacts and I would have to start from the bottom again. So that's why I thought then a technology PR agency would be a good way to get into that and start making contacts as well.
I love it. And obviously now to where we are today, you're a recognised, highly respected leader. But In those early days, moving over, not knowing anybody, what sort of gave you the confidence to put yourself forward and lead, despite maybe not having the networks that you once had?
I think it's probably my upbringing. My mum was over last weekend. I'll never forget the people like Maurice Smith or my old boss Aidan Higgins and stuff that had given me those chances and stuff. I'll never forget the things that my mum did. There was 5 of us, 5 kids. We grew up in a a border region in the north of Ireland. It wasn't a salubrious area to grow up. There wasn't much hope for any kind of like the jobs that I ended up with. It was more farming and stuff. There wasn't a huge amount of employment around the area. But my mum just wanted more for us. And I think that's probably what steered me on. And my granny was the same. She had 9 kids, then she fostered kids, then she looked after the Gardaí that came to the border areas and stuff as well. So it's probably driven in me from my mother and my grandmother. One thing we did speak about when I was in school one day, my mum seen a thing in the newspaper about a scholarship to go to your languages. Most of my friends went to the Gaeltacht to speak Irish for 3 weeks. I could think of nothing worse, even though I did love our mother tongue, but I was like, I'm not going to live in somebody's house. But this thing really interests me to go away to a boarding school for 3 weeks and just speak French, because I loved French. I loved French more than I loved Irish, whereas now I would love to be able to speak Irish the same way I speak French. So she came into the school with the newspaper clipping saying there was a scholarship on offer and it had to be in for the next day. So she went and spoke to the French teacher, excluded me from the classes, and I just sat down and did the scholarship and I won it. It was all down to a company called Kingspan in Ireland who basically sponsored kids to go and do this. It was expensive. I think it was about £600, which today isn't that much for 3 weeks. But at that time, when you come from a family of 5, it was something that was not reachable for us. That was another chance that I got to get out and to learn French, meet people. And I just knew from that stage that I didn't really want to stay around the border area. I wanted to do something with languages and I wanted to get away from that area. And from that, I told my mum and she was like, we'll make it possible. So yeah, she was always the driving force behind every single one of us and never gave up. And yeah, there's times I'm going, I don't know how she put up with 5 of us. She said to my dad, why did we have 5? And he said, which one of them would you give back? I'm sure I was top of the list.
I'm sure not. And it's so lovely to hear that your mum was such a driving force and supporter throughout the early days. It's so important, isn't it, when you come from humble roots and humble upbringing to just have goals that are beyond what you think you could achieve.
Yeah, and my dad was there as well, but I don't think he's seen himself as somebody who could push us forward. He probably sat back thinking, who am I to tell anybody or to try and do it? But both of them worked so hard for every single one of us. So I owe a lot to them.
No, I love that. I love to hear it. Thanks for sharing that. And let's talk for a minute then about how we met, because that's a bit of a funny story. I remember it well, surprisingly. But I'd like to hear your version.
Yeah, I was thinking, people were saying about, you've been Irish, you should know about football and Celtic and Rangers. It means nothing in Ireland. So when I moved over here, I hadn't a clue either. But actually that night, I didn't even have a clue. So I remember there was a space going free. And I said it to somebody, one of the guys was at the table with us, do you want to come? He said, who's going to be there? It was a street soccer dinner. And he said, and I just told, I don't know where I got the name of some footballer or some football manager, and then he arrived. I remember it was Brendan Rodgers, which was good for you. Yeah. It didn't mean anything to me. It didn't, and the guy was fuming because the name that I gave him was a Rangers. He was like, did you do this on purpose? I was like, no, I didn't. And he was just sitting there and he goes, oh, actually, he was really good. I have to admit, he was really good. So yeah, that was our first time that we met, and you were bidding for things for your dad and stuff.
It's normally what happens in a bidding situations. I forget that you have to pay for it, so it feels a little bit like a game to me until they come over with the pen and paper and the card machine.
And one other thing that I meant to say about that night is we had Declan Doyle, who was there, one of the guys that worked. He's got on to Social Security Scotland. He worked for us for a few years. And you asked him, was I his mum? So I will get you back.
He looked so young though. It wasn't like he looked old. He looked like he was in his 20s. I'm sure he'd like that. So before Eddie touched on it at the start, but I'd personally class you as a true connector in business, and you've brought MBN to many tables that have resulted in really strong partnerships, probably most notably Arnold Clark. How important do you think connections are within the business world?
I wouldn't be anywhere without the connections. I think what's really important is people do make connections, but don't look after them. And I think that's a shame. Whereas if people have helped you, then they'll help you help them. And I always remember those partnerships and relationships, but also the people then that you recommend to do a job, make sure that you do the really good job for those organisations that you get the recommendation for, because you won't get recommended again. Michael, your CEO, he's always thanking me for the referrals and the people he's met through me, but he's never let anybody down, and he's got the same sort of ethics behind looking after the clients. I would say all of the clients that we all worked with, we're still all friends.
Yeah.
And we've been, a lot of the clients of MBN, we've been away and they've moved on to different organisations, but we've been to New York, we've been to different places and stuff when I worked at the data lab. So I would say a lot of the people have become friends, and any of us could probably pick up the phone at any stage if we needed something or needed some advice for anything in our careers. So I think that's really important. Michael and myself, we go out for coffee, lunch, and sometimes we might need it. Sometimes Michael might need some Jude time, I might need some Michael time. But at the end of it, both of us feel good at the end of it, because we've worked with each other for 10 years and had that relationship and stuff as well. It's an easy recommendation for me to recommend people from MBN.
Yeah, no, and I think, as you say, he's always thanking you, but he speaks so highly of you. And actually, just as an aside, we were in our board meeting yesterday and we're going to pull off the sort of 350 people that were placed through the data lab and try and create a bit of a storyboard around where are they now. So we'll definitely share that with you, because I think that'd be really interesting to look all these years on and try and map out where these people's careers have taken them for the work that went into that back in the day. So we'll definitely share that with you.
Oh, that'd be really good. And also all the inward investment companies that come in as well, that MBN helped out as well to build out their workplace. And people like Ed from, I always call Ed from Medano. He's not Ed from Medano anymore, Ed from Tomorrow. And he's still a great friend of both of ours as well. So, and going on to do amazing things again with Tomorrow. So
yeah, I think it's great that you can maintain the friendships. And as I go on to talk about it, a lot of the time, business relationships or the relationships you forge through business go much deeper than you'd expect. How do you think the relationships that you've built over the years have actually impacted your leadership style?
I think people know what they'll get from me. They know what to expect. They know that there's boundaries. They know that there's no non-negotiables, anything to do with the ethical way of dealing with people. They know that that's never going to be pushed. And if it is, then that's when we walk away. When people treat people badly, then that's a non-negotiable. So people know I'm very much like my dad as well. I expect people to be good to people.
Yeah, good values at heart. I think that's really important. And so you've led the Data Lab's growth, you've steered SBRC through crisis, and now you head up the Cyber and Fraud Centre. What do you think it takes to lead in really high stakes, constantly evolving environments like those that I've just mentioned?
The Data Lab was probably an easy job. It was the best business development job because we were guaranteed funding for 5 years. So if somebody's got money put into your bank, it's easy to do good things with it. We had that foundation. The foundation was the money was there. So that was an easy thing then to do the really good. I'm not saying everything was really easy to do with it, but it was much easier than having to go out and find that funding to do the good things. I did get a bit of a shock when I took over as CEO of SBRC at the time, which is now Cyber and Fraud Centre. When his first day in the job, I sat down with Ken Russell, who was on our board, and our finance person, and we didn't have enough money to pay the wages at the end of the month. So that was quite humbling. I didn't tell my husband that as well, that I'd left a job with
what needs to be shared.
a guaranteed job, that I might not have a job at the end of it. It might be the shortest time as a CEO ever. But when I looked around the team, I was like, we can't let this go. The other thing that happened that week was when everybody was sent home for COVID, for lockdown. So that was my first week as a CEO. The country was in bits. The organisation was in bits. I was in bits. I was like a baby, waking up every few minutes, crying at night, going, what the hell have I done? But we got there. And I think it was probably that resilience as well. And also a bit of, if I mess up being a CEO, it's my first time messing up as being a CEO. I'm now doing the Entrepreneurial Exchange Programme. And I remember Sean, the guy that runs it, said, if a company goes under, it's not your fault, unless you've really messed things up. But if you've given it a good go, stop taking it personally. I wish I had have been able to have that team from Entrepreneurial Scotland then. So probably the success was a bit around naivety as well, going, I hadn't a bloody clue what I was doing. But I had that network of people like Michael that I could call. He was like, what the hell's going on? At least everybody felt the same way. Nobody really knew. It didn't make any difference that I was new in a CEO job. Even in any other role, it would have been the same thing because nobody predicted COVID. Nobody knew how it was going to go. In the end, it was probably the saving of our organisation because we pivoted. The traditional business resilience was gone, and cyber and frauds was a huge area that we needed to focus on because everything went online. So there were some pretty horrible things that we were working on, and the team just got stuck in. And when I say pretty horrible, a lot of the fraud stuff around nursing homes, we had to help. It never got used, but the big hospital at the SECC to build out safe communications for patients who may have to do their last will and testament, their last phone call to family and stuff. But it was like, we've got a job to do, guys. We're just going to have to do this. And just think of the families that we may have to support over the next few months, but it happened to be years. So we saved the organisation, we transformed it, and we had to make some tough decisions as well to do that. But we got there. I got a new chair, Paul Atkinson, who's still our chair, who's amazing. And in the last few years as well, we knew things were going to be tough around government funding, so we prepared for that. And we don't rely on any government funding now. Since last year, we've been self-sustaining, which again is a huge growth journey for us. That's where the difficulty is whenever you come out of a funded organisation into something that you have to lead, you have to be the manager, be also to make sure that the wages are paid at the end of the month. It's been very much a learning transition, but I am lucky now that I'm able to sit back with Entrepreneurial Exchange and probably reflect on what I've done and figure out, was there a better way of doing it, or actually it was just getting on with it.
Well, that's it. And I think of all the circumstances to have been thrown into, do you know what I mean? And as you speak about it, it's so harrowing, but we don't see what goes on behind the scenes. So to be able to make a difference in a situation like that, I think the resilience that takes is incredible.
Yeah. And then also my kids were older, so my younger one was going into secondary school and the older one was doing her exams. So I just concentrated on the older one and let the younger one go feral. So I was like, hats off to any of the parents, the mothers that worked and the parents that worked for me. I was like, how the hell are you doing it? And it was like, Jude, and I said, just take time, go and lie on a sofa, do whatever you need to do. Do not be paranoid about work. We'll get there. And I think from that, we had that kind of culture then in the organisation. The work does get done, but family comes first, not COVID, not anything else. We have to look after each other. I don't want anybody looking back at COVID and saying I had a shit job for a shit boss and we were treated really badly.
Well, because people will always remember that, won't they? They'll remember how they were made to feel in that situation. And obviously, so cybersecurity, where we've landed now, it's often seen as like a real technical world, but you've brought a real sort of deeply human lens to it. Why is that so important to you, and how do you embed empathy when you're working in some of these really difficult environments? So I think with cybersecurity as well, you're saying about the things that a lot of people don't see the attacks that are going on. And we hear about the Marks and Spencers, we hear about the Co-op, we hear about the big organisations, and we hear about the public sector attacks like Glasgow City Council, because they will talk about it and they will be open, but a lot of organisations won't talk about it. So the empathy is not there really for organisations because they don't understand what it's like to have an attack and to come in and all of your business operations to be floored, that there's nothing. You're back to pen and paper, you're back to mobile phones. So that's why I have more empathy around the cyber side of things, because I know what people go through. And also, I think it's really unfair to critique and judge organisations for it, because you come in again from the border in Northern Ireland. Growing up, we grew up with bank robberies and people coming in and taking money that wasn't theirs. And I see similarities to that. This is a criminal offence, and the bank robberies were treated like a criminal offence. So the banks were closed down, the staff got support, they got mentoring and stuff. Whereas a cyber attack, it's like, no, it's business as usual. So Arnold Clark, for example, when they had their attack, they still had to be able to sell cars. And how do they do that? And how do they know what kind of cars they've got? How do they know what cars are in for servicing, for hire? People coming in on holidays for Christmas and stuff as well.
But then the press starts critiquing people, and then we've got the armchair critiques on LinkedIn saying it shouldn't have happened and stuff. And I was like, because my mum says, don't criticise other kids until you've reared your own. It can happen to any of us. And I know that. It's not if, it's when. So I think that empathy as well is, you don't get shutting down your business. You don't get the support. You don't get the counselling and stuff. Bigger organisations can probably do that, but the smaller organisations, it's all hands to the pump and just try and get the business back up and running again.
Yeah, and I think that's the deeply human lens that you bring to it, isn't it? And I've seen some of the comments on LinkedIn and some of the conversations that you get into to try and help people understand or correct people that don't see what's going on and also don't see the impact that this has on people. Do you know, it's sleepless nights, it's a lot of stress for the people that are involved, and it's not just business is people, and it's the people who are running these businesses.
Yeah, and also when it's attacks on public services like Dumfries and Galloway, people's medical data, the HSE attack in Ireland. My dad at the time was in hospital with Parkinson's, and we helped out the HSE because it was the same criminal gang, Conti, that attacked SEPA at the time. So we were able to give us some intelligence and get the team that worked with SEPA onto the HSE as well. HSE said at the time, they were like, thank you so much. It was an hour of their time getting the whole team of our guys and the police and NCSC and stuff as well involved. They said we knew it was bad, but now we know how bad it is, but we've got contacts now. So I think reaching out to people, supporting them as well. They are victims. We have to make sure that they are victims. But also when it comes to public services and healthcare as well, people can die. And we've seen that last week, that the first death in the UK was attributable to blood transfusion. The blood banks been attacked last year, and a patient died waiting for blood. It's not just about money. It's not just about bringing businesses down. There is that human factor as well about it. West Lothian Council, they knew it wasn't, and I was saying to people, relax, calm down. These kind of, Marks and Spencer's getting attacked, it's bad for them, but you're not a cyber victim if you can't order flowers online. We've got choices. People in the islands, when Co-op went down, they didn't have choice, so they probably were a cyber victim. West Lothian Council, hats off to them as well for their education system went down the weekend before all the exams, but my child included, they all got doing their exams, and I was the bearer of bad news to my daughter, who texted me saying, West Lothian Council have had a cyber attack, we don't have to do our hires. And I was like, sorry about that. But
I've sorted that one.
I didn't sort it. It's going ahead.
It's brilliant. And I think it just shows that there's a real sort of innate within you sense of justice, and that really comes through in everything that we speak about and what you're involved in. So what would you say your leadership style is today versus maybe the Jude of sort of 10, 15 years ago, and how do you think it's changed over the years?
I remember I had a 360 feedback session when I was in the data lab, and one of the comments was, I wish Jude paid as much attention to the people inside the organisation as she does outside.
Wow.
Yeah, and that, to me, that was really hard to take. And I was like, what's that supposed to be? Like, my job was head of business development marketing. So, why would people want me to be paying attention to them inside? And they should know what they're supposed to do and stuff. That was a real eye-opener to me. And I remember it was like Gail Creco, the person, she was like, but people do want to spend time with you. They want to learn. They want to know about how you came up, how you did something. Is there a quicker way of doing it? And then sometimes I feel that younger people probably know better than us because they know a faster way of doing it. But that doesn't necessarily mean they still want your guidance. They still want your help and stuff as well. So I had to slow down. When I looked at myself, it was like I was on a train 100 miles away from everybody else, going off and doing things and then just saying, right, this needs to be done. And they're going, what the hell is she talking about? John Callagher always says about my emails, or whatever needs to be done is on the heading of the email. It's not inside it. So that is a big reminder. I was actually coming today and I was thinking, yeah, it was quiet now in the summer. I need to start doing some more coaching and stuff and spending more time with people. And that was always, it was the biggest learning thing for me, going, be as good internally as you are externally.
Yeah, I think that's a massive lesson to learn, isn't it? And I think it's really brave of anyone in any organisation that opens up that 360 feedback, because generally speaking, that's where you'll get the crux of what's going on and what people want, and maybe what you're not given without even knowing it a lot of the time as well. So you've sat on boards from Data Driven Innovation Initiative to Parkinson's UK, and you've really helped shape Scotland's resilience landscape, as we spoke about. When you look back over your career, what are you most proud of?
My career, probably starting again whenever I came here, and also the work we did with UNICEF, setting up the data hub, the collaborative for children. And it was using data science to do good for children and to try and crack the sticky problems that affected children. One of the ones that we worked on was the closure of a refugee camp in Darfur. So Michael was actually with us, and the guys from Brainwave, Agreco, and there's a few others that we went to meet UNICEF in New York. We were talking about setting it up, and they said, we've got this issue. And the government are threatening to close down this refugee camp. They said there's only 1 million people in the refugee camp. We estimate there to be about 2 million or 3 million. Probably the one thing career-wise that I'm really proud of is setting up the UNICEF Data Hub for Children to prove that data science can help solve really sticky problems that face children around the world. So when we were in New York with the data lab, we met with UNICEF, and they were talking about setting up the data hub in New York, but they couldn't get the right people to do it. So we had people like Michael from MBN, Brainwave, Greco, Steve Fall, who was a Greco at the time. And they told us about a problem they were facing around the closure of a refugee camp. And their estimation for the numbers were 2 million people in the refugee camp, but the people in the government were saying there was only 1 million. So UNICEF had to try and prove them wrong some way using data. The government were saying there was 1 million because they were using phone records. They were saying there's 1 million mobile phones, and then they were like, children are not going to have mobile phones. And also it's usually because of the culture and stuff, it's the men that have the mobile phones, not the women. So they knew it was greatly underestimated. But so at the meeting, the guys from Brainwave, Steve from Brainwave was like, we've got relationships with Airbus, and we'll ask for geosatellite data going across the refugee, they're flying across the deserts and stuff. So within 6 weeks, we were able to give them data from Airbus, and some of the data scientists then worked on it from the geosatellite data to basically pixelated images to say that there were near enough 2 million people. So they couldn't then close down the refugee camp, which then solved and basically stopped a humanitarian crisis that year in Darfur. So that was a very quick way of us. There was no delving into personal data. There was no names. There was nothing. It was just using geosatellite data to stop a humanitarian crisis. So I think bringing the people together to do that really was probably one of the highlights of my career. I think as you get older, and now I've got 2 kids, the thing that I'm probably most proud of is my 2 girls. I couldn't be prouder. I remember, again, on the entrepreneurial exchange thing, we were talking about what do you want? What do you want from life? And one of the guys was with me. He says, I want kids that aren't arseholes. And I was like, you're actually right. It's like when you have kids and you're watching all these, and he goes, my mum says, you don't criticise other kids until your own reared. And I was like, imagine if they turn out to be like, I don't know, robbers. Actually, my youngest, it's touch and go at times. But the 2 of them make me so proud. They make me laugh every day. They make me smile. My eldest, Hannah, who's 20, she very shy, completely different to me, whereas the second one that could be in prison, she's very like me. But Hannah's just come back from Tanzania from doing a placement with an orphanage and a school, and I think she's really struggling being back in society again and going, why am I working part-time? Why am I, for what, Mum? I don't want the big job. I just want to go out and work with these kids who have nothing, and they're the happiest kids. She brought over some equipment to them. There's 57 kids in one orphanage, and she kitted them, all the boys out with football boots. Went to the market to buy more because she didn't have enough. And art supplies, she said she was doing this thing with a tree, cutting out their hands and stuff, but they had no scissors. So she had to go back and get her first aid kit. She had money saved, and I think she said her spending money each week was about £40, and that was going out and having beers, really good food. She went off to Zanzibar. She had those kind of trips paid for before. She had money saved from working in Buzzworks, and she works there and all the different restaurants, goes around different places. She's down at South Queensferry now. And they gave her the time off and everything to do it. So she's like, I've worked really hard, I've got the money. And she didn't come home with anything. She gave all the money so that she could put 9 kids through school this year and then put some money into a disability clinic. And to put 9 kids through school for a year is £100 per child for the year. That's their uniform, their books. their transport to school, and that's their end of year trip. The way she sees it is she'd rather do that because she knows she's getting them out of the orphanage during the day. They're well looked after in the orphanage then the evening time, but they're getting an education and they're starting on the same thing. So I think she's already talking about going back next year for 2 months. The nuns wanted to keep her, but
yeah, I totally imagine. You know, I'm in awe, and I think at such a young age to have identified already part of your purpose in life, I think is really unusual. And I think the world that children are brought up in these days, in the world of social media, I think to do something that's maybe different from the norm, and it's clear to see where she gets it from and where that inspiration
I didn't want her to go.
From,
like I was like, could you not go maybe to Spain or do some bar work or something like that? And I was Googling snakes in Tanzania and showing her, and I said, you're going to have to get boots. And she said, you know what, Mum, I've lasted 5 weeks out there and I've never seen one snake.
So all the things that a mother would worry about. And I can totally see why you'd be so proud of both your daughters. And any time I'm in your company was a huge chunk of the conversation. So I'm not surprised. They've got wonderful parents.
Well, thank you.
You've inspired and you've mentored many leaders coming through the data, digital and cyberspace. What's one piece of advice you wish you had earlier in your career and you share with others?
Early in my career, I think what I did, look, Hannah, I'm probably jealous of what Hannah's done now. She's travelling, she's taking the time out. But again, I probably couldn't afford it. In Ireland, you had to pay for all your education, you had to pay for your university fees and all that. I would say if you get the chance to travel, do it. If you get a chance to take a year out before you go to university, do it. She took a year out as well because she did all of her exams through COVID. And I was like, do you really want to start university, start that life again? Our university days were very different to what theirs was. So she took a year out. She got on to the Scottish team for weightlifting, and she got her part-time job down in Buzzworks and stuff. And you can do so much more with that year than just starting straight into university. I told her to get your place the year that you're doing it, and then make sure then if you're going to take that year out. My biggest thing as well is not working somewhere else abroad. What I should have done when I worked for Dell was taken that opportunity maybe to go to Australia and work there, or New York. Every time I go to New York, I was like, I should have worked over here. John Callaghan that works with me, he's going to still never too late, Jude. And I was like, no, I'm too old now to do something like that. But yeah, just take opportunities, go and do it. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So yeah, just go and do it.
I think that's great advice. We just never know the moment. Life is too short, and you'd rather wake up with regrets of things you did do than things that you didn't do. So I totally agree wholeheartedly. So you've had an amazing journey. We've covered lots of it today, but what's next? What's next for you, Jude, and what's exciting you at the moment?
I said earlier on that 5 years is usually that's when I start getting bored. But I think what we're doing at the moment, I've got an amazing team. I couldn't be prouder of them. You were talking about my leadership style. I think with me, with the Cyber and Fraud Centre, is the leadership is what goes on in the room when you're not there. It's like, they're just amazing. I get these emails from everybody saying, oh, the guys were fabulous. We were all so lucky with the people that we've got. We set up the charity last year for individuals affected by fraud. Again, that empathy probably side bit as well. There wasn't much that we could do for people, but we knew there was a huge issue around people getting caught with fraud, by money not being returned by the banks and stuff. So we've got that set up. And really that growth journey now in commercial, what do we do being a social enterprise, but also having to pay our way as well? So without competing with organisations, it's that fine line of how do we generate commercial income versus doing good as well. So I think there's probably about 2 years left of me probably in Cyber and Fraud Centre. What's next? I don't know. Again, maybe it'll be my time to travel, maybe because the girls will be the right age. Megan will hopefully be in university or in jail.
She's going to kill you.
I know, she's out shopping today too. So I don't know when. She doesn't have much. She's not on LinkedIn.
I'll tell her.
So yeah, I don't know. I lost my dad 3 years ago as well. Maybe it's time to go back to Ireland and stay longer with my mum. I don't know. I'm just going to
take each day as it comes. What can you do?
It's nice to be able to have options, and it's nice that my kids didn't turn out to be arseholes.
What brilliant way to end the podcast. I love that. That should be the tagline for the full recording. Jude, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you for sharing your journey with me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Class Act. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, please reach out to us at MBN Solutions using the link in the show notes. See you next time.